Welcome to Mocktails and Masterpieces with the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra. Today's episode is sponsored by Anthony Team Realty. Good afternoon. Hello, I'm Dana Stone, the Executive Director of the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra, and I'm here today with Jorge Muñiz, who is a composer, and ICO is premiering his work very soon. So we're going to take a minute to get to know Jorge and his style. Right now, I'm going to pass it over to Jorge and let him introduce himself.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the introduction. Then it's just wonderful to be able to meet and talk a little bit about music and maybe discuss a little bit this upcoming premiere, which I'm really excited about.
Absolutely. Now, this project has been in the works for a long time. I mean, many times when we have a commissioned work, it's a year and a half process, but this one goes back a little bit further. Maybe you can share a little bit how Classical Music Indie, who's our partner on this concert, on this piece specifically, how you came to get involved with that competition and just the evolution of the piece and the experience.
Yeah, so classical music indie did a national search and a call for composers for proposals, and it was very attracted to me. First because I have worked with them before, and I love their mission of supporting new creation and especially supporting Indiana composers. So that's really unique what they're doing, and I think we're all very grateful to have organizations like them to support new creation. But I was very attracted also the fact that it was a large scale type of composition where I can really present something that it goes beyond what often might be contemporary premiere that might be just 5 minutes, 10 minutes composition. These allow me to really tackle on something that will hopefully have more repercussions and more connections with communities and audience. So I had sometimes composers, we have these ideas that they're kind of simmering in the back burner, just waiting for the right time. And this to me was the right time. So when I was selected for that, I proposed this project, which deals with how to approach the subject of human dignity from our current times. That's something very important to me. In other works I've done, I wanted to always include our communities in the collaboration, in the conversation also. So for me, this was the perfect project to start. So yes, these started about 2 years ago, and but having more time means that I can really dive into the preparation of a piece like this, which is not just the stage of writing the music, but there was a lot of research that happened before to help me really understand what I was going to be talking about.
Definitely. I think kind of seeing how it's come to be, and I've listened, of course, the MIDI recording. I'm excited to hear this with a full orchestra.
Thank you.
ICO has been involved with classical music indie in a lot of different smaller ways, but we've never been involved in a project like this that actually involved a performance and a really collaborative experience. And I think the other aspect of this opportunity for you and for ICO is the recording component. And I know the project was supported by the Allen Whitehill Clues Charitable Foundation. So we're very grateful for their support that allowed us to really take this leap also. And I'm excited to see how we can use this content, how you can use this musical content and kind of continue to share that musical message. And speaking of that, one of the things I challenged you with was to take your orchestral work and pare it down in time and
Mhm.
scale
Mhm.
to a string quartet, because this piece, as well as our other commissioned work this season, really speak to human dignity. Our other piece really speaks to immigration and refugees, and the two things really they meld together in a really beautiful way, finding music to use as a connection to build bridges and cultural exchange. So you've been so kind to create that string quartet version, and I've been busy finding partners where we can present that to members of the refugee and immigrant communities, as well as to those that support people in those communities. So can you talk about the process of just taking that orchestral work and narrowing it down in length and in instrumentation.
Indeed, indeed, and I applaud you also for you and Maestro and your team for this crafted program that you are presenting on February 1st, because it's really wonderful when several composers and pieces come together to present a message, and this is one wonderful case of that. So it was a challenge, but when you proposed that, I was really interested in exploring that, because here is a piece that is my third symphony, so it's symphonic work. Um, and although there's not a large symphony orchestra, with all full winds and all that, it does have this symphonic gesture just because of the length, the three movements, almost 30 minutes, but also the gestures in the group. So how to put that into, not just like you said, into a string quartet as opposed to a string symphony, um, but also into basically making it about half of its duration. Um, and so it was a challenge, but at the same time, there were some elements already in the symphony that I think it really prepared for a transition like this. So first of all is the fact that the symphony speaks to our communities, but also from a very individual perspective. So chamber music is perfect for that intimacy. So there's a lot of intimate qualities in the symphony as well, from the fact that the cello speaks, the solo cello speaks first, and then is joined by a quartet actually, before the full string symphony group starts. So that right there is that kind of element of the individual and the um, and the intimate, and so the challenge in that sense was how to bring the other side, because it's important to bring the community, the large group as well. So I think it's the writing of the quartet also that becomes in some way a little more symphonic as well. But I try to not just shorten but condense, so the audience, by listening to this abridged version, they still will have the same emotions that you will get, just in a different angle. And I think that's the interesting thing to me, that as a piece for quartet, I think it can also stand on its own. I think.
That's incredible. I'm really looking forward to experiencing that version, and then also being able to share that with the community in a way that the concert hall is not accessible to everyone. So finding a way to really bring that out and share that with more people is really important to ICO's mission, and I think it's just a really great way that we can share more with more people. So um,
And if I may, I will add also that conversations, yes, they can start after a concert in a hall, but conversations need to start in our communities. So what better way than bringing the music to their communities, to these communities, to spark that conversation? So that's wonderful.
Absolutely. We're really excited. So I know that you have chosen a piece that we're going to share with audiences, another piece that you've composed. So we will cut to that now. Thank you so much for sharing that work.
Of
I know
course.
audiences are going to really enjoy hearing your musical style with the ICO. Um, let's talk about the name of the symphony, um, and then we'll talk some details about the concert. But I also would like to know if you can share a little bit. This is a harder question. Um, how do you see innovation happening in composition for classical music? How do you approach that?
Okay. So I think one of the wonderful things, and try to instill that in my students as well in composition, is the fact that these current times that we live are very individual, probably the most individual times in the sense of voice, very personal voice. And I think that's what I want to see in the young composers also developing is a very personal voice. So that innovation to me is represented by the very individual, unique backgrounds of every composer. I have my unique background because I'm originally from Spain. I'm kind of half and half in my lifespan between Spain and the United States, but I also feel that United States has welcomed me also as an immigrant, very with very open arms, and I have received many blessings from all the people that I have met and to me that also has brought a lot of the culture that I have learned from this country, the different cultures, the different traditions, and that's something that to me has come through my music. So while there is a Spanish color in my music, I think the audience might be able to feel. There is also a lot of elements, particularly the vernacular sometimes, that of the American music that kind of comes through. So this blend is to me what perhaps makes my voice different from other composers. Perhaps it's not a particular method of composition or technique of composition, but the fact of that, and I also, there's something I tell my students as well, that every technique, every tool available is available to every composer. It's how we choose to use them, is which ones we use that makes us unique. So I hope this is answering your question, but it's a very important question, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's very interesting. I think there are people that think, anything that can be composed already has been. It's like, well,
Mhm.
no, absolutely not. There are infinite opportunities
Well,
and options for change and variation. So,
to me, in my way of understanding being a composer and being a musician, it's about communication. It's about transmitting an idea or an emotion to an audience. That's why I love opera very much because it's a way to tell a story with emotions, you know.
mhm.
And I think music is really powerful in that sense. Um, but my way of talking about something through music is going to be always different than others, you know. So there's never going to be an obsolete or like an end to because there's never will be an end of how we share our emotions with others, you know. There's always going to be something different because we're all different. So I hope that makes sense, but to me like language and try communication in the verbal language or written language, composition is the same. So I think there is a great future in that sense because we're all communicating in very different ways.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about Solidarity Symphony, which is premiering on February 1st here at the Schrott Center for the
Mhm.
Arts. It's a collaborative performance with Classical Music Indy and actually also with the International Violin Competition of Indianapolis. We have Serena Wong joining us for the Beethoven Violin Concerto. So there's new and traditional kind of meshed together in a really fantastic concert. But let's talk about Solidarity Symphony and the name and kind of just a little bit about the evolution of the piece.
Certainly, certainly. So, like I mentioned before, to me, this is one of those things that was simmering ideas that I was waiting for the right time, and yes, this was the right time. It kind of comes together, although the subject of human dignity was in my mind for a long time. Pope Francis in 2019 wrote an encyclical called Fratelli Tutti, all brothers, you know, and I think it spoke very eloquently about the issues of our time in the whole world, not just from his perspective, but in a universal way.
Mhm.
And to me, that was the perfect document to start my journey in developing this piece. So I chose basically the first four chapters to devise these three movements in the composition. So they work as a structure, because the first chapter he discusses our current times, the issues, the great issues that we have right now. It's called Dark Clouds Over the Closed World, and it discusses the problems of war, terrorism, manipulation of information, violence, the issues of current issues of immigration as well, and many other issues that all come together in one single idea, which is, do we respect every other human being? Do we respect them for what they are, or for who they are, as opposed to just being a number, or being just a statistic, So in order to prepare for this symphony, this was a great way for me to structure it. But I needed more. So in my research, I felt like I mentioned before with opera, I need to tell this story through emotions. And what better way to talk about emotions than using poetry? So for me, I very much wanted to inspire myself with the emotion of poetry, even though the piece doesn't have a narrator, is not a requirement that it needs to be read through or even sung, But it was part of what I needed myself, and I hope that perhaps people might be interested in also reading the poetry and reflecting on it, and reading also this document as well that I mentioned, because it might help them also in that journey of the music. So the poetry that I chose for that first movement was Cage Bear by Dr. Maya Angelou, and I think it's a great pairing with the current times that are
Mhm.
presented in that first chapter. For the second chapter, so the second movement, I chose the second chapter, which is called A Stranger on the Road, and Pope Francis talks about the parable of the Good Samaritan, and I was struggling a lot how to be more inclusive in the idea of what a good Samaritan would be. How do we react when we see others in pain or in suffering? So I chose actually poetry by Gwendolyn Brooks, the last quatrain of the Ballad of Emmett Till. It's a very dramatic poem. It's a really short. It's only four lines, but it's a very dramatic poem that dwells on the historical facts of what that lynching that happened. Long time ago, but still very much present in so many of us. So here I was looking for how someone can bring to the attention of others something really dramatic, like what happened to the mother's this son.
Mhm.
So that's the second movement, and finally the third movement. In this journey, I wanted to make sure that yes, we're dwelling into the issues of the time. We're dwelling into how people react to seeing this suffering, but how we're looking into the future. So for that, I chose Langston Hughes, Let America Be America Again, which it's powerful and yet very hopeful, I think, as well. The two chapters I kind of blended together from the encyclical was An Open Heart for an Open World. And again, it's looking at, okay, so now how do we sit down together, recognize each other, and talk about how to change the future, how to embrace the future. So that's what this last movement does. It really presents an arc from the first movement to the last, from real darkness at the beginning and oppression, uh, particularly when you hear that cello being suppressed by the full orchestra at times. From that journey at the beginning into the brightness and the lights of the last movement.
I love that. Well, I want to make sure audiences know you can get tickets at icomusic.org. We're happy to help you arrange how to figure that out, navigate our duet packs and chamber choice opportunities, and look forward to seeing you all in February, and you, Jorge, as well,
Yes.
as we come together to make some beautiful music with a gorgeous message that I think is really relevant today. So thank you for sharing, and we look forward to seeing audiences soon.
Thank you very much.